The spotlight hung heavy over the stage, a golden haze cutting through the smoke-filled air of the Las Vegas Hilton showroom, where the hum of anticipation had given way to the thunder of 20,000 hearts beating as one. Elvis Presley, the king himself, stood there in his white jumpsuit adorned with eagles, sweat glistening on his brow like dew on a midnight rose, his voice still echoing from the final notes of Burning Love. The guitars faded. The drums rolled to a silence, and in that fragile pause, a single, ragged shout shattered the reverence, drunken bellow from the shadows of the crowd. Thick with rage and liquor, "Elvis, you ain't the king of nothin'. Come down here and prove you're a real man." The words landed like a slap in the face of glory, freezing the room in a collective gasp. The air thick with the scent of perfume, cigar smoke, and sudden unease. Spotlights swung wildly, catching glimpses of faces twisted in shock, hands clutching programs, the faint clink of glasses halting as if time itself had stumbled. Elvis's blue eyes narrowed under the brim of his shadowed gaze, his chest rising slow and steady, the microphone trembling slightly in his grip as the echo of that challenge lingered, a ghost in the glittering hall. No one moved, no one breathed, the weight of the moment pressing down like the desert heat outside, where neon lights flickered against the night sky, oblivious to the storm brewing within. In that suspended heartbeat, the king's face softened just a fraction, a flicker of understanding crossing his features, as if he recognized the pain behind the poison of pain he knew all too well from his own lonely roads. And as the tension coiled tighter, weaving through the rows of wide-eyed fans, one couldn't help but feel the pull to hold on to stories like this, to like them, subscribe to their telling, and share them with those wandering in their own darkness. For they remind us how light can pierce even the deepest shadows. The band shifted uneasily behind him, instruments poised like weapons in a standoff. The bass player's fingers hovering over strings that suddenly seemed to taut. The pianist's hands frozen on keys that had moments ago danced with joy. Elvis lowered the microphone for a beat, his breath audible in the whoosh-a-deep, measured inhale that carried the weight of years spent under the glare of adoration and scrutiny, years of applause that masked the whispers of doubt. The heckler's voice had come from the middle tiers, where the lights dimmed and the faces blurred into a sea of expectation. But now all eyes turned toward that spot, a ripple of murmurs spreading like wind over water. Security men in dark suits edged forward from the wings, their footsteps muffled on the carpeted aisles, hands ready to grasp and remove, to restore the illusion of untouchable stardom. But Elvis raised a hand, jeweled rings catching the light like stars falling to earth, his gesture calm yet commanding, stopping them in their tracks. The room held its collective breath, the air heavy with the mingle of excitement and fear, the faint rustle of dresses and suits as people leaned forward, straining to see. "Hold on, fellas," Elvis said into the mic, his voice low and drawling, laced with that southern warmth that could melt steel or harden it, depending on the need. The heckler, a burly figure swaying in his seat, shouted again, his words slurring into the void. "You heard me. You're just a showboat, phony." The crowd gasped anew, a wave of disapproval murmuring through the hall. But Elvis didn't flinch. Instead, a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. The kind that spoke of battles fought in quieter places, the ache of a poor boy's rise, the sting of critics' barbs, the isolation of a crown too heavy to bear alone. He leaned into the microphone, his eyes scanning the darkness, finding the man amid the throng, and in that gaze was not anger, but a quiet invitation, as if he saw not an enemy, but a mirror of his own hidden fractures. The lights dimmed slightly, casting long shadows across the stage, the orchestra's instruments glinting like forgotten treasures, and the tension built like a storm cloud gathering over the Nevada desert, thunder rumbling in the distance of unspoken fears as the man rose unsteadily from his seat. The crowd parted like the Red Sea under Moses' command, whispers turning to a low hum of speculation. Who was he, this intruder daring to challenge the unchallenged? His name, as the story would later reveal in hushed retellings, was Big Mike Henderson, a 35-year-old construction worker from Phoenix, his frame broad from years of hauling steel and concrete under the relentless sun, his face weathered by more than just the elements. Liquor had loosened his tongue, but beneath the bravado lay a deeper current, one of loss and desperation that the bright lights of Vegas couldn't hide. He staggered down the aisle, his boots thumping against the floor in uneven rhythm, the scent of whiskey trailing him like a shadow. His eyes locked on the stage with a mix of defiance and something softer, almost pleading. Security hovered nearby, ready to intervene, their radios crackling softly in the background, but Elvis waved them back again, his voice cutting through the murmur. Let him come. We're all friends here tonight. The words hung in the air. A bridge extended over an abyss, and Big Mike climbed the steps to the stage, his hands trembling not from fear, but from the fog of alcohol and the weight of whatever demons had driven him to this moment. The spotlight enveloped them both now, Elvis standing tall yet approachable, his posture open. No hint of the karate stance he might have struck in earlier days of paranoia and threats. Big Mike stood there, breathing heavy, his shirt rumpled, sweat beading on his forehead under the heat of the beams, the crowd's eyes boring into him like 1,000 judgments. Elvis stepped closer, microphone in hand, his voice intimate now, as if speaking to an old friend across a kitchen table at dawn. What's eatin' at you, son? Why come at me like that? The question wasn't accusatory. It carried the gentle probe of someone who had stared into his own abyss, who knew the echo of empty rooms and broken promises. Big Mike hesitated, his bravado cracking like dry earth under rain. And in that pause, the hall fell into a profound silence, broken only by the distant clink of ice in a forgotten glass, the soft whir of air conditioning fighting the rising heat of human drama. The tension peaked, hearts pounding in unison. As the two men stood face to face, the king's empathy beginning to unravel the threads of anger, hinting at the heartbreak waiting just beneath the surface. Big Mike's voice cracked then, the alcohol's bravado giving way to a raw vulnerability that echoed through the microphone, amplified for all to hear the slurred confession spilling out like a dam breaking after years of silent strain. I lost my job last month, he muttered, his broad shoulders slumping under the weight of the words, his eyes dropping to the stage floor, where the lights reflected like shattered glass. Wife left me, took the kids, been drinkin' since noon just to forget. The admission hung there, heavy and human, stripping away the mask of the aggressor. revealing the broken man beneath, the one who had wandered into this glittering palace of dreams, seeking not a fight, but perhaps an escape from his own crumbling world. Elvis stood silent for a moment, his hand resting gently on the microphone stand, the jewels on his fingers catching the light in quiet sparks, as if absorbing the pain like a confessor in a dimly lit chapel. The crowd, once buzzing with unease, fell into a deeper hush, the kind where you could hear the faint creak of seats, the soft intake of breath from thousands, the distant hum of the city's neon heartbeat filtering through the walls. No one expected this turn, this peeling back of layers in the midst of spectacle, where the king, adorned in his regal attire, met the commoner's despair, not with dismissal, but with a nod of recognition, a shared humanity that bridged the chasm between stage and seat. Elvis's eyes, those piercing blue depths that had seen their own storms of loss and loneliness, softened further, his voice dropping to an intimate murmur that carried through the speakers like a warm southern breeze. "I know that hurt, brother," he said, his drawl wrapping around the words with genuine sorrow. "I've walked those lonesome miles myself, nights when the applause fades and you're left with the echoes." The air grew thicker, charged with empathy, as fans leaned forward, their faces illuminated by the stage glow, feeling the pull of a story unfolding not in song, but in souls laid bare. As the confession lingered, Elvis stepped closer, his presence enveloping Big Mike like a protective shadow, the scent of his cologne mingling with the Heckler's whiskey breath in a strange communion of opposites. The band members exchanged glances, instruments idle, the drummer's sticks hovering as if unsure whether to punctuate the drama or let it breathe. Security lingered at the edges, their tense postures relaxing slightly, hands dropping from radios, sensing the shift from confrontation to something sacred. Elvis placed a hand on Big Mike's shoulder, firm yet tender, the touch transmitting a quiet strength that steadied the swaying man, his trembling hands now clasped together as if in prayer. "Life's thrown you some curves, hasn't it?" Elvis continued, his tone reflective, haunted by his own memories, the poverty of Tupelo, the loss of his mother, the relentless grind of fame that chipped away at the spirit like wind on stone. The crowd, drawn into this intimate exchange, began to murmur softly, waves of understanding rippling through the rows, women dabbing at eyes with handkerchiefs, men nodding in silent solidarity. Big Mike looked up then, his reddened eyes meeting Elvis's, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as he realized the king wasn't mocking him, but mirroring him, acknowledging the universal ache that no amount of spotlights could fully illuminate. In that moment, the tension that had coiled like a spring began to unwind, replaced by a budding empathy. The hall transforming from a theater of entertainment to a sanctuary of shared burdens. Elvis turned slightly toward the audience, his voice gaining a gentle resolve. "Folks, this here's a man who's hurting, just like any of us might be on a bad day." The words invited them in, weaving the 20,000 into the narrative, their collective breath syncing with the unfolding heartbreak, the faint rustle of programs and the occasional sniffle punctuating the silence. Like rain on a tin roof dot, the revelation deepened, Big Mike's story unfolding in halting fragments, how the construction site layoffs had come without warning, the arguments at home escalating until the door slammed shut for good, leaving him adrift in a sea of empty bottles and regret. Elvis listened, his head tilted slightly, the lines around his eyes creasing with genuine concern. His own history of personal turmoil lending authenticity to his attentiveness, the prescription haze, the marital strains, the paranoia of threats that had once made him lash out in fear. The stage lights dimmed imperceptibly, casting a softer glow. As if the technicians sensed the need for intimacy, the golden haze enveloping the two men like a confessional veil. Big Mike's voice grew steadier, the alcohol's fog lifting under the weight of being truly heard, his hands gesturing vaguely toward the crowd as he spoke of dreams deferred and pride swallowed. Elvis nodded, his response measured and poetic, drawing from the well of his southern upbringing where empathy was currency. Pain like that, it can make a man holler at the world, but it don't make him less of a man. The words resonated, striking chords in hearts across the room, evoking tears from those who had their own hidden scars. The widow in row 12 clutching her ticket stub, the veteran in the balcony remembering lost comrades, the young couple sensing the fragility of their own happiness. Tension gave way to a profound heartbreak, the kind that binds rather than breaks, as Elvis hugged Big Mike, a simple, enveloping embrace that spoke volumes, the king's cape draping over them like wings. The crowd erupting in spontaneous applause that started slow and built like thunder rolling in from the desert. In that hug, the air shifted, the scent of sweat and stage polish mingling with the raw emotion, paving the way for understanding to bloom amid the chaos. Elvis pulled back from the embrace, his eyes sparkling with a mix of resolve and mischief, the kind that hinted at redemption waiting in the wings, the stage wings, where the band awaited his cue, instruments gleaming under the lights, like promises yet unspoken. "All right, Mike," he said, his voice lifting with warmth. "Let's turn this around. You came here challengin' me, how about we settle it with a song?" The proposal hung in the air, a bridge from despair to hope. Big Mike's face registering bewilderment, his unsteady stance steadying as the idea took hold. The crowd murmured in anticipation, the energy shifting from sorrow to a tentative excitement, hands clasping in laps, eyes wide with wonder at the unfolding grace. Elvis signaled the band, the pianist's fingers dancing lightly over keys in preparation, the guitarist strumming a soft chord that echoed like a heartbeat reviving. According to the tales passed down from that night, Elvis chose "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands," a gospel tune rooted in faith and unity, its melody simple yet profound, carrying the weight of Southern revivals and personal self. Big Mike hesitated, his voice rough and uncertain at first, but Elvis joined in, his rich baritone guiding like a steady hand on the wheel. The two voices blending in unexpected harmony, the king's polished timbre lifting the Heckler's raw tones, creating something beautifully imperfect. The lyrics filled the hall, "He's got you and me, brother, in his hands," resonating with the audience, who began to clap along, their applause building layer by layer, transforming the moment into a communal hymn. Tears streaked faces in the front rows, the light catching them like diamonds as Big Mike found his footing, his earlier anger dissolving into a tentative smile, the alcohol's grip loosening under the power of inclusion. As the song progressed, Elvis encouraged Big Mike with nods and whispers, the stage becoming a shared altar where vulnerability met valor. The crowd's energy feeding back in waves of support, the faint sway of bodies in seats, the collective hum joining the chorus. When the final notes faded, the applause exploded, not just for Elvis, but for Mike, who stood there, stunned, his hands raised in disbelief, the roar washing over him like a baptismal flood. "You hear that?" Elvis said, leaning into the mic with a grin that lit his features. "That's for you, son, for having the guts to stand up here and sing your heart out." The words sealed the transformation. Big Mike's eyes welling with tears of gratitude. The heartbreak of his confession now alchemized into a budding hope. The hall alive with the scent of fresh possibility amid the lingering smoke. Elvis, ever the showman with a healer's soul, turned to the audience. "Now, this man's needing a job. Who here's got something for him?" Hands shot up, voices calling out from the shadows, construction bosses in the crowd, moved by the display, offering leads and promises, the practical extending from the poetic. In the retellings, 3 company owners approached after the show, one hiring Mike on the spot, leading him to a new life in Vegas, where he worked steadily for 15 years, forever changed by that night. The tension had fully unraveled, replaced by a deep understanding, the kind that lingers in memories like a favorite melody, reminding all present of the thin line between breaking and mending. The song's echo still vibrated through the speakers as Elvis and Big Mike stood side by side, the king's arm around the former Heckler's shoulders. A tableau of redemption, frozen in the spotlights, embraced the crowd's cheers, swelling like a tide, washing away the remnants of discord. Big Mike wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his broad frame no longer defiant, but humbled. The weight of his burdens, lightened by the unexpected grace extended to him. Elvis, sensing the moment's peak, spoke softly into the mic once more. "We all got our troubles, but tonight we lift each other up." The words, simple yet profound, resonated through the hall, evoking nods and quiet amens from the audience. Their faces a mosaic of emotion, empathy, deepening into a shared revelation. The night's drama revealing the king's heart, not just as an entertainer, but as a man who understood the fragility of the human spirit. As Big Mike descended the steps, security now escorting him with respect rather than force. The band struck up the next tune, but the energy had shifted irrevocably. The performance infused with a newfound reverence. Whispers spread through the rows, fans exchanging glances that spoke of the unforgettable. The air humming with the afterglow of transformation, the faint clink of glasses resuming, the rustle of fabrics, as people settled back, hearts fuller for having witnessed mercy in motion. In the quiet spaces between songs that followed, the story began to take root, a legend born from a single act of kindness. Its emotional layers unfolding like petals in the desert bloom, carrying the audience from the brink of conflict to the shores of profound connection. As the applause subsided into a warm, lingering glow, Elvis guided Big Mike back toward the edge of the stage, his arm still draped around the man's shoulders, the two figures silhouetted against the backdrop of shimmering curtains that whispered softly in the circulating air. Big Mike's steps were steadier now, his face flushed not just from the liquor, but from the rush of unexpected absolution, his eyes scanning the sea of faces that no longer judged but embraced him as one of their own. The king's voice, still resonant through the microphone, carried a final whisper meant just for him. You take care now, here. And remember, tomorrow's a new day. Big Mike nodded, a single tear tracing down his cheek, catching the light like a fleeting star. As he descended into the crowd where hands reached out to pat his back, voices murmuring words of encouragement that blended with the soft hum of the orchestra tuning up once more. The moment lingered in the air, thick with the scent of lingering perfume and the faint metallic temps of stage lights heating up. A collective exhale from 20,000 souls who had journeyed from shock to solidarity. Elvis returned to center stage, his white jumpsuit catching every beam, his posture regal yet humbled, as if the encounter had peeled back another layer of his own guarded heart, the heart that had known the sting of poverty in Tupelo shacks, the grief of losing Gladys, the relentless pressure of a throne built on talent and torment. The band struck into Can't Help Falling in Love, its melody swelling like a balm over wounds. Elvis's voice wrapping around the lyrics with a depth born from the night's revelation. Each note a bridge between his isolation and the audience's devotion. Fans swayed gently, some linking arms, the hall transforming into a cathedral of shared humanity, where the echo of Big Mike's pain reminded them of their own fragile threads lost loves. Unspoken regrets, the quiet battles fought in the shadows of everyday life. As the song built to its crescendo, Elvis's eyes closed briefly, a tremor in his hand on the microphone betraying the emotional toll, the weight of being not just a performer, but a vessel for others' healing. The performance continued, but the night's essence had crystallized in that singular exchange, a story that would ripple outward like rings on a still pond, carried home in whispers and retold over late-night coffees and family dinners. Big Mike, now seated again amid strangers turned allies, felt the fog of despair lift slightly, his trembling hands steadying as offers of help poured in. A business card slipped into his pocket, a promise of an interview whispered from a nearby row, the practical seeds of hope taking root in the soil of kindness. Elvis, between verses, glanced his way with a subtle nod, his blue eyes conveying a silent pact. We've all been there, brother, and we rise together. The crowd's energy pulsed anew, applause punctuating not just the music but the unspoken understanding that fame's glare often hid a man's deepest vulnerabilities, the pills that dulled the ache, the entourage that couldn't fill the void, the mirror that reflected a legend but not always a content soul. As the set drew toward its close, the lights dimmed to a golden haze, shadows lengthening across the stage, like memories stretching into the future, the air cooling slightly with the promise of midnight outside, where the strip's neon battled the stars. Fans rose for the ovation, their cheers a thunderous affirmation, but beneath it lay a quieter current of reflection, hearts heavy with the realization that true strength lay not in confrontation, but in compassion's quiet embrace. Elvis bowed low, his cape sweeping the floor, sweat mingling with the faint scent of his aftershave, his breath coming in measured waves as the curtain began its slow descent, sealing the night in a veil of reverence. In the wings, aides waited with towels and water, but for a moment he lingered, gazing out at the fading faces, feeling the pull of their love like a lifeline against his own gathering storms. Years later, The tale of that November 14th, 1976, night at the Las Vegas Hilton would endure as a whispered legend among Elvis devotees. Though some historians debate its finer details, whether Big Mike's name was truly that, or if the song they shared was precisely "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands," the essence remained unchallenged. A moment when the king revealed his most royal quality, mercy amid mayhem. Big Mike, by all accounts in the stories passed down, rebuilt his life from that pivot, finding steady work in construction through connections forged in the crowd. His family ties mending slowly like a scar fading over time, though the full truth of his path remained shrouded in the mists of personal privacy and time's gentle erosion. Elvis, too, carried the encounter forward, a quiet victory in a life marked by triumphs and trials. His own health waning in the months that followed, the weight of performances and prescriptions pressing ever heavier, culminating in that fateful August of 1977 when the world lost its icon. Yet in retellings, the story evokes not just the glamour of the stage, but the raw humanity beneath the trembling breath before a response. The silent plea in a heckler's eyes, the shared silence that speaks louder than shouts. As the lights finally faded that night, the audience filed out into the desert chill, coats drawn tight against the wind, whispering through palm trees, carrying with them a piece of something sacred, the understanding that even kings bleed, and in vulnerability lies the truest power. The hall emptied to the echo of footsteps on marble floors, the faint clatter of ushers clearing glasses, the stage left bare, save for the lingering aura of transformation, a testament to how one act of empathy can echo through generations, turning loss into legacy, heartbreak into harmony.